before we get into the show, make sure to do a couple things. First of all, click the subscribe button down below and make sure to turn on your notifications, please, in order to get updated content that I start to put out. I do put out weekly videos, so hopefully you enjoy those. The second thing you can do is to make sure to be empathetic and understanding for all of my guests that come on this show, but otherwise, enjoy the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Penishevitz, and with me today is a fascinating individual who has been working with teams in League of Legends since 2015. He has worked with Moss Esports, Dream Team, Tainted Minds, Echo Fox, and is now currently the head coach for the Golden Guardians. Please let me introduce Nick Smith, maybe better known as Inero. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, man? Thank you.
So, I won't lie, with your name, I was super scared because of Inori, and whenever I see your name, that is definitely, I even wrote it wrong at first when I was like writing up my notes. I was like, Inori, and I was like, no, that is wrong. Inori was a player. So it was.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot to me, actually, which is a little surprising. I've had random people in solo queue bring up aren't you that jungle guy? And it's like, yeah, it's me. I'm Inori. Yeah.
Pro player, now pro coach. So, we're going to have a lot of things to kind of talk about. Your back life, there is not a lot of information out there on, which I think is kind of cool because that means there's something new for people to kind of learn about you. Part of the reason that I did this show was to show that everyone who is kind of involved in esports really does have a kind of like human aspect to them, and they're really similar to people who are not working in esports, but a lot of times they get put up in like pedestals or put in a way that seems so out of reach because of the way that the PR and stuff works with it, which I think is understandable because it's an entertainment industry. So one of the things this show does is to help humanize people who are on here. And one of the things that I found about you that I thought was kind of a good starting point. And we're gonna jump around here. We'll talk about some stuff related to esports, some stuff not. But one of the things that I found out about you is that lighting and design was something that was a viable career option at one point where you were thinking about if esports doesn't ever work out. What's the story behind that? Where does that come from? Also, my green screen lighting is probably garbage.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, so that's one thing that's pretty, it's not too well known. I'm actually not sure how you would have found it out. I maybe tweeted it at some point, but
I will say I'm very thorough with the research that I do, so.
Yeah. So when I was coming out of high school, I had like a little bit of a rebellious phase at the end of high school, and it kind of turned into, like I really wanted to do stuff in music production. I had like a really, really huge passion in music, and I still do. So I was going to school for different things in the music industry. Like I went to a community college for literally just 1 year, and there was one of the what were they called? They're like electives, elective classes that you could look to do, and one of them was lighting, and I just did that. And I had another like a sound engineering class as well, and I didn't expect it to be something that I actually enjoyed, but the whole like lighting design thing, I ended up spending like hours after class because they had like this big theater where they just had like a lighting console. It was a grand I don't know if it's actually pronounced, I can't remember if it was Grand MA2 or people just literally called it Grandma or whatever. But that was just a lighting console they had there for us to use, and I would just like design stuff on the theater stage that I thought was cool, and I just messed around with it and tried to figure out how it worked. And it was something I was actually really, really interested in, and just lights in general has always been something I'm kind of like passionate about. Everything we see is due to light. The way we perceive everything is due to light. That's just really interesting to me. Like you can just mess with people's perceptions of things based on lighting and anything like that. And of course, in like live shows, lighting is one of the biggest things that happens. Like you see at festivals, like anything like in League, obviously, and like esports right now, EDM's the big thing. Everybody goes to their fucking raves and stuff, you know? It's just a light show. Like the music is one thing, and like the sound is obviously great, but it's mainly just everyone's messed up. They're looking at lights and stuff, and they're just having a good time. And like I think that's just a really, really cool thing that I've always had a big interest in. And it was something I was actually pursuing at first when I got into League of Legends. I was actually kind of planning on so I wanted to be a player, but I also wanted to be involved in some way with like just a live production team. And I thought like, okay, I'm pretty decent at League. I could probably get a job doing something in League of Legends, and then when that like eventually falls out, I could work like with Riot doing like their live production stuff that they do for like LCS and stuff, because I was a huge fan of watching that.
Yeah.
So that was just like a little small like pipe dream thing that eventually could have popped up in the future maybe, but yeah, that was one of the weird things that kind of got me into doing more stuff seriously with League of Legends, surprisingly. But yeah, then I ended up coaching, and that's kind of faded away for now.
Yeah, and then there was the down tunnel rabbit of forever in your life. So you mentioned that you had a rebellious phase, which makes me want to ask a couple questions about like growing up and stuff like that. So you were born in the United States. Where were you born in the United States? Because I wasn't able to find that out, and normally that is something I find out all the time.
Yeah, I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
It's right in the middle of the state, the most boring place in the world. It's actually nicknamed Greensboring by the hilarious people of North Carolina.
You sound like you have a lot of resentment for that area, because it sounds like a very bad okay. So I grew up in Upper Michigan, and I don't know if you've ever been to Michigan, but I grew up in the UP part that everyone forgets is actually there, because they only think of Detroit. But there's nothing up there. Like, all people do is drink. That is basically it. We have hills, snow, and drinking. So when you talk about it like that, it kind of reminds me of being back home, and how some people are like, oh yeah, this is a terrible. Everyone knows each other. You have to be here all the time. And there's nothing there. First of all, how old are you? Because I actually couldn't find that out either. So.
I'm 24. I'll be 25 next month, actually.
Oh, nice. March 8th. I did find that out. So that's on your Twitter. So, so you grew up. We're actually relatively close in age. I just turned 27 recently, though I look 12. So, growing up in North Carolina, what was that like for you?
That was all right. I mean, it was just kind of boring. I don't think I'm the type of person to stick around in the same place for too long. And I could definitely feel that as I got older. It was just pretty lame. I really did not enjoy just the fact that there wasn't really anything that, I don't know, I felt that was too fun in North Carolina, or at least in Greensboro. I kind of felt like I had done really everything I wanted to do.
So how big is it? Because it sounds really small, but like,
I mean, it's not actually like too small. Like, it's a decently sized like little town compared to like LA. Like, it's nothing.
Oh
like,
yeah,
it's
LA is
smaller than like Santa Monica in LA. You know, but it's still like it's a decent city. A lot of stuff is within like a drive. Like, I can go to the beach if I drive 2 hours one way. I can go to the mountains if I drive 2 hours another way. So there's like stuff to do. It's just, I don't know. It gets boring. I think that's just like my personality. I just get bored if I'm in the same place for too long, and I feel like I'm not really, exploring too much.
No, that makes. I mean, you've got to travel like a ton now. So that makes sense. Like, you've been all over the place. So do you have any brothers or sisters?
Nope. No
Only
siblings
child.
at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only child. So you mentioned that you were a person who likes to travel a lot. Does that mean that growing up during school did you have a lot of really close friends, or were you mostly like acquaintances? Because I know for me, going through school, most of the people were just acquaintances, and afterwards I didn't talk to any of them, which is actually fairly common. But
I actually had basically the same friend group all the way from middle school, like from 6th grade or 7th grade. I mean, there's like this just clique of mine. Basically, we all grew up through high school. Some of us like grew apart. We don't really talk too much anymore. But I still meet up with those guys from like whenever I go home. Like, we always hang out and do stuff together. So yeah, no, I had a tight knit group. I had like a bunch of people I guess I was acquaintances with in high school, just from like the classes I was doing, all of my elective classes and stuff. But I don't really keep up with them too much anymore.
Mm-hmm. So were you so knowing you now, like even though this is making a huge assumption that is not necessarily true, I'm going to state that right now. Like, looking at you now and the type of person like you portray yourself to, I'd be like, oh, this was definitely a popular kid growing up in school. This was the kid you wanted to be. He was a little bit rebellious. No?
Nah, definitely not. I was okay in middle school. Close, kind of, a little bit, but not really. I went to like a super fucking nerdy middle school. It was one of like the magnet school things, So like being the cool kid in the magnet school, it's just like, all right, whatever. You're just like the cool nerd, you know? But in high school, no, definitely not. No, I was a little, I was a loser pretty much in high school. I was just that kid who did ROTC, did well in classes, didn't really talk to anyone. Actually, like the way I speak is like super monotone. Was just like from how high school was going for me. I like basically shut off when I got into high school. I still don't even really know what happened. I just like mentally shut off and just went full robot mode whenever I was in my classes and just like didn't really talk to people, never had emotion. And then it just kind of stayed like that. Like it's just kind of hung on there, and like I can break it sometimes, but it's actually like really difficult. I like very easily fall into just like a robot mode where I'm just like monotone, like, hey, what's up? It's Nick. This is me, just being myself. And I just like no emotion. It just feels like I'm just a lifeless corpse, you know? So yeah, that was me in high school. So I mean, you're not really going to be the popular kid in high school if you're acting like that, you know?
Yeah, that I could see that. So you mentioned ROTC. Was military something that you were considering then, like as a choice afterwards? Because I know I wanted to do military, but they do not take people who have missing fingers at the current time when I did it.
I didn't even know you were missing a finger.
Most people don't notice, but they're gone. So
yeah, I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't accept people with missing fingers. Might might be problematic in wartime, I guess. But yeah, no, I was planning to join the military. Like I got into ROTC, specifically planning. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be in the Marines. I'm planning to go to Naval Academy.
You wanted to be a Marine. Damn, you were shooting.
Yeah.
You were like...
Yeah, I mean, my like ROTC instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Sweeney, he's a hella cool guy. I really looked up to him a lot. He's like one of my big role models as a kid. Yeah, definitely kind of pointed me in that direction. I was definitely on the path to do that. I was like through my whole process with going to Naval Academy. Yeah, I was like, I passed my physical test. I did the whole like, oh man, they had to do so much shit to get into that thing. Just to like get your appointment, you had to like do certain essays. You had to get references from certain people. You had to go through like an interview process. It was the dumbest thing ever. And I got through all of that. And then I got to the end of it and I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened during that time, but where my brain was just like, nah, I'm not really feeling this anymore. And just kind of like stopped. But that was my initial plan, was going through with that. I was super committed to that, and it was kind of my life plan until things kind of like just exploded, and then all right, not doing that anymore, finding something else in my like last year of high school.
Yeah, that what was that explosion that happened that changed everything?
Oh, it's the dumbest thing ever. It's quite possibly the most stupid thing ever. Okay, so I'm going through high school. I'm doing literally everything people have told me for years to do, making sure I'm always on point with it, always making sure I'm focused on homework, getting like perfect grades. So I'm like a straight A student through middle school, high school. I'm in the IB program, all AP classes, all IB classes. Focused on that. I'm an Eagle Scout.
Damn.
I was doing ROTC. I was the commanding officer of my ROTC unit. I was doing fucking everything. And then I didn't get accepted to the University of Texas at Austin. And I got fucking pissed. I was so pissed off. It's like, what the fuck else do you need me to do? Like, well, what do I have to do to prove that I'm just a better qualified student than anyone else? Like, I listened to everyone for so long, and I was listening, doing all of this, and was basically told that if you do this, you'll be successful. You'll be able to go wherever you want for college. So I did all of it. Didn't get it. I never got to do sports in high school because I was focused on that, and I really fucking love sports. And then yeah, all of this combined, I was just like super pissed. So I just go to school. I'm just so angry and like I don't want to do anything. And then I had this like dumb thing with like a girl I had a crush on where that didn't work out because I was just a huge fucking loser. And at that point, it just like my just brain was gone. I was just like, I don't want to do anything anymore. I don't want to fuck with school anymore. I actually ended up running away from home in the middle of English class, and I drove from North Carolina to New York. Over a week, I just like ditched. It's just like, I'm not fucking doing this shit. I'm just gonna go find something else to do. Awful decision. Like, obviously, huge asshole to my parents. Apologize so much to them that this is just the worst thing ever I could do to them. But it was ultimately pretty good for me to just like reset and realize kind of like what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to just completely break away from listening to what people were telling me to do.
So, what did you do in New York for a week? Like, you're 18, or maybe you might not even been 18. You might have been 17.
Yeah, I was 17. I was 17 at the time. Yeah, because it was November of 2012. So yeah, I was 17.
So you just hop in you're like, fuck this. You get in your car and you start driving, and you're like, I'm just gonna go to New York. Yeah. Like, do you have family there? Do you have?
No, I didn't know anyone there. I just I thought it'd be really cool to see New York. So I just started driving and just kind of drove through random places. I had been to DC before, so I kind of remembered like where to drive around in DC, which is really strange. Like I didn't expect to remember anything there, and but
DC's
like,
fucking crazy. I've driven through DC.
Yeah, no, DC's insane.
It's insane. Like if people think LA traffic is bad, DC there are no rules on those roads.
Yeah, so like we had taken an ROTC trip to DC before, and I had I just like naturally pay attention to things to try to like remember like escape paths from places because I'm just a fucking absolute idiot. And so I kind of remembered where we parked for a certain subway line to go to the Arlington National Cemetery because there's like a parking lot like right next to the line there. So I had found that place, parked there, and I just like went around DC like on the metro system and then just went back to my truck and then just drove to, I went through Baltimore after that. And then I think that's the order it was. I think I went through, because I can't remember, DC goes first, and then you go into Maryland, so I'm just Baltimore. And I ended up in New York from there. And I don't know, there wasn't even anything really to do in New York. I drove into New York by accident. Like, obviously I wanted to go there, but I didn't realize that when I went through this tunnel that was going to go, it was like in New Jersey, and it go into a tunnel. Didn't expect that it was just going to go straight into the city. I thought I was going to have to do like more than that, or I'd have a way to like turn around so I could like park before I go in because I wanted to take like a subway or something. No, I just ended up paying like a fucking huge toll to go into the city, and then I'm just a green truck in the middle of the city, like just driving around. I just feel so out of place, and it's the most hectic place to drive through ever. It feels so insane.
I've heard New York is also worse than LA.
Oh, it's really bad. Like driving there should not be a thing that you do. It's really nuts. I thankfully got out of there and then just like left. I actually didn't do anything in New York. I just drove there and I was like, I really don't want to be here. And I just left and just started driving around like back down south and everything. But it was actually during like the Occupy protests that were happening at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So when I was in Washington, I decided to like walk through it just to see what it was all about. That was the dumbest shit ever. That was fucking funny from what you see that was on the news and then what was actually happening there. It didn't really seem like anything was happening. It was just a bunch of dudes hanging out just with tents. I was like, all right, well, this was really hyped up and there's nothing there. And I don't know. It was an interesting time. It was definitely one to remember that I should definitely not do again. It was a fun experience.
Good learning experience, I suppose, at the very better to learn that early or not. So, your parents, you mentioned that you definitely apologized to them. What were your parents like growing up? Are they together still? Because a lot of people I talk to, parents separated. My parents are twice separated, so they're triple divorced.
Yeah, damn. My parents split when I think it was 2. I don't remember. I was like, just about turned 2 or something. So I was like super young. So I grew up. I would visit my mom on weekends for the most part, and then I stayed with my dad and my stepmom. But no, they were chill growing up. My dad's always just been like a super great guy. I really look up to him. Like he's a great person. My stepmom was more of like getting me to actually like do things school wise. So she actually really helped me a lot, focusing on school and trying to keep me like on a good path of that stuff. And then my mom was the same way. She was really focused on me being successful and wanted me to do really well in life. So they were always super supportive as a kid. So running away was definitely not on them.
Oh yeah, no, I imagine that you got. If you didn't get your ass reamed out after that, I'd be like I was so worried about you.
Oh yeah, no, they definitely were mad at me. I yelled at them back and forth, but yeah, they understood afterwards. They were just happy I was safe.
Yeah, I mean, a week. Did you call them the entire time? Like, hey, I'm safe. Don't worry about me. Or did you just not call them for a week?
Oh, I text them. Like,
Okay.
I text them to let them know. I was like, hey, I'm just doing this thing. Don't worry about me.
Okay.
But obviously, like, if you're a fucking
Yeah.
parent, like, you're gonna be worried. Like, what the hell? Like, my kid just ran away. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I kept in touch with them to let them know I was good.
Thank
So.
God for cell phones. So you
Yeah.
seem like you mentioned like going through AP classes and being in art. You sound like a very, very, very good student, which reflecting on my own studies seems very sad. What do your parents do? Because they seem to be a huge motivation in your life. What did they do?
Well, my dad's a mechanic. He's been working in the same. He actually just like left his job to go work at a different mechanic place. But before then, he'd been working there since he was like 17. So they've been doing that. He's been doing that thing forever. And my stepmom, I still don't know what it's called. She's not an architect, but she like when people are building buildings, they have the spreadsheets or whatever, and she basically checks to make sure they're good and that everything's correct and that they're the right amount of steel or whatever parts, and then approves it and then ships it off. I don't know what that job is called. I've never really bothered to learn it.
I feel like it has the word survey in it.
It's something I don't fucking know. And then my mom's been bouncing around a lot of different jobs, but she's mainly done stuff as like an accountant.
So, what was the drive for you like growing up that was like do in school? Because you mentioned that you really loved sports, but you didn't ever pursue that. What was it that convinced you that hey, you can't do this sports thing because you should be doing all these other things?
The not doing sports thing was mainly because I have asthma, or at least as a kid, like that was like a big problem. I was like hospitalized for it when I was a kid because something happened with like just playing sports with the kids in the neighborhood and stuff. But yeah, my parents just really wanted me to actually have a lot of focus on doing well in school because especially like for my dad, he was like, I don't want you to end up like having to do what I'm doing where you're like working from the age of like 18 onwards and like you're just paycheck to paycheck and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like push on that, and they just wanted me to be in a better spot than them, you know? And I just trusted that. I was like, yeah, you know, I'm cool with that. I don't want to be a mechanic. I'm down. And just kind of listen to them, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Though I will say, mechanics where I'm from, they charge like $85 an hour for labor. So I mean,
my dad
insane.
is definitely not doing the $85 an hour for labor thing for sure. I'm sure he would love to have that, but
yeah. I need to see your dad then for my car repairs coming up. So you mentioned one of the things is you went to go see the Occupy Democrats. So, and growing up, you went through. I would say that probably both of us. You were a little bit more involved with because Obama would have been in office for both of us. So like you've seen a lot of political shifts, and when 9/11 happened, you would have probably been in like third grade. I'm guessing maybe second. I think it's second or third. So you've seen a lot of
around then, yeah. Or seven. I think, yeah, 7.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of like political shifts happen, and I think it's kind of funny because if you look at esports, you see a lot of politics that happen there too. So no matter what you do, you cannot really avoid any of the politics. What has kind of your stance been on that? Like, how do you view the subjects? How do you handle those? Where do you feel like are you someone who feels that people should be speaking out, should not be speaking out? Where do you stand?
Like, should people just be speaking out on like what they believe in and stuff?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people always should. I think it's not a bad thing to be very vocal about what you believe in, like whether it's right or wrong. As long as people are willing to like have actual conversations about what they believe in, and then actually be willing to listen to people. That's one thing I've noticed is a lot of people, they like to put their opinion out there and then definitely don't want to hear what people have to say in return. It's like, oh, fuck you. Whatever you're saying, man, is completely wrong. I'm correct. So yeah, I mean, I grew up obviously like North Carolina's in the South. Yep. So it was like super heavy right leaning place growing up. Greensboro is actually one of the more like left leaning areas, of the state. But I was like in the country part, like right outside of it. I just went to school in Greensboro. So I had like a very mixed bag of experiences. And obviously growing up around the internet, you get more of like different things around people's political leanings and stuff. So I definitely had a variety of ways to form my opinions about things. And thankfully, my growing up with my parents was definitely not them just teaching me to be extremely on the radical side of what can come from the deep South beliefs of things, because obviously some really bad stuff there. Yeah. So I think I'm a pretty like evenly headed person. I'm pretty open to people's ideas and hearing about things, and I've never been too radical on either end, I think.
And I mentioned that's beneficial, like looking at coaching too and working with teams, because that's something that I've noticed. If you're not willing to like listen to people, it can be a very, very bad. Skill to have.
You're doomed from the beginning if you can't listen to people, pretty much.
Yeah. So going through school, you didn't ever get to play sports. Did you ever hold any resentment to that? Because when you talk about it, like, and especially when you turned 18, I imagine that there was definitely some resentment. But even up until that point, were you ever like, this really, really sucks, and this is what I want to do? And do you feel like gypped out of missing something that would have been a great experience?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of my choice and kind of not. Like, obviously, when my parents pulled me out of doing stuff, or like kind of dissuaded me from doing things with sports, like the asthma thing, like I got it. Like I understood. It's like, yeah, it's probably good. But I would have liked to have been doing more physical stuff and doing stuff with sports. Like I felt like I was really good at football. I really enjoyed playing football with friends and stuff. And I wanted to do something with that. At the same time, you know, it's just, what can you do? It wasn't the end of the world. I kind of just replaced doing sports with playing video games. I competed in like game battles tournaments whenever I could at home. I'd just come home from school and just get on with my friends and just play tournaments, try to make some money, you know. Yeah, it's just for fun. But I definitely wish I could have done football. Looking back, I really, really would have enjoyed playing football. I think I would have been really good at it. I'm just like a super competitive person. And I just needed that like competitive outlet with something. That's why, like, I think when the college thing, like I didn't get into one college, it pissed me off so much, because like education kind of became my competition, and I wanted to just be able to apply anywhere and get it, and that's me like winning. And then I just saw that as like I lost. I was really pissed. So
it's I'm gonna have some questions later about some of that thought process, because that's gonna jump back into the esports. So I'm gonna save some of that for later. So growing up, school seems like it was fairly good. It doesn't seem like you have that many other than that one instance where everything kind of hit the fan. But other than that, it seems like high school was very good. So you're looking at leaving high school. What are you thinking about doing? It sounds like you wanted to get away. Like that sounds like it was something on your mind. So what are you thinking when you graduate and you don't get into school? Did you apply to other schools? Did you say, fuck it, I'm done with school completely?
I had applied to other schools and I got into all the other ones. I was just too pissed that I said I don't want to go to any of these colleges. So I just decided not to go to any of them, and I just instead did a community college thing. So I went to Guilford Technical Community College, which is just the local community college everybody ragged on for being bad, but it's just like, oh, they had a course I wanted to try, so I just did that. And then I started working at my my stepmom's place, doing very, very, very basic, just like bookkeeping stuff. It was the dumbest job ever. I had to work. I basically worked full time doing it, but I could finish all my work like 1 hour into the day, and it was just my boss didn't know anything about computers. He didn't know how to do any of this stuff, so he just needed someone to do it for him, and he didn't know how long it would take. So I was just like, oh, I'm chilling here for an hour and just pretending to work, just tapping away at my keyboard, doing whatever I could find to do. That sucked, and then I ended up working at a restaurant. And that also sucked.
I've worked in a lot of restaurants,
that eventually led to me just like wanting to move somewhere, like just move somewhere completely different and just try to do something else.
So where'd you head off to?
I ended up moving to Florida. Actually, I moved to Orlando.
There's a lot of crazy shit that happens.
Yeah, like I could choose literally anywhere in the world to move to, and I moved to Florida. I did have like family, like my grandparents on my mom's side, they retired, so they're living in Florida like every other fucking retired couple does. So it was like fairly close to them, so I knew if I ran into trouble, like, hey, at least I have family there.
Yeah.
So I moved to Orlando and I tried to find like so many different job opportunities that might actually help me. Like the original thought process was that, okay, if I'm in Orlando, there's a lot of entertainment stuff around here, obviously due to like Disney and whatever the other one, Universal Studios, all that stuff around there, that there's probably something I can get, like an entertainment gig somewhere doing like lighting stuff, something like that. Nothing really panned out with that. It was actually like pretty hard to get really anything, which looking back, like, yeah, no shit, dude. It's probably a place a lot of people look for jobs like that are probably a lot more qualified than you. So yeah, I was just chilling in Orlando doing basically just like dumb work, just whatever job I could find, just existing while playing League of Legends in Orlando. That was really it.
No, okay, and so I mentioned that in 2015 you kind of got your start. You actually did. I read something that said you did work with Dignitas EU first. It depends on where you look, kind of, for that. Was that the first team that you worked with? Was Dignitas EU?
So the first team.
I was gonna say, or is it Pride Z? So
Pride's there was one before Pride's. So while I was in Florida working at that ropes course thing or whatever, I was doing like very minor amounts of like individual work with this guy named Dan. It was just a challenger jungler in the UK, and he had like a UK team there. I was like helping him individually. He ended up leaving that team and going to form one called Pride's, basically. Is like just one we made. God, who was on that team? I think that was the team with it was Beansu, Dan, and then a bunch of other guys. And we just played some like tournaments. I think we did well in them. And then Mouse Sports was getting rid of like their people on their roster, and they were going to get Dan's team. And while all that was happening, I was also, because like I didn't know what was going to happen with Dan and like Prides. I had no idea, so it was just doing it with a friend. The guy that I got linked up with that got me that job with Dan in the first place was helping out Dignitas EU. And so I like just shadowed him for a bit and like talked with those guys like very, very briefly. It was actually how I like met Wonder and everyone, like Sincox, Kabe on that team. So it was like a very small thing. I had the option to join Dig EU or to join Mouse Sports when all of this happened. Which is actually how I got my name, Inero, because I was just trying to figure out what the hell my name would be. And it was like, all right, if I'm joining Dignitas, I'm joining it for the money, just because like I could use money and it would be a good experience for a good team. Or I'm joining Mouse Sports to like stay by my friend and like stick with him and try to like build something cool with him. Ended up joining Mouse Sports, but kept the name Inero. Which is just meant to be dinero for money in Spanish. And then I just became Mouse Inero. And yeah, so that was, Mouse Sports was like, I think my first legitimate team. Everything before that was just kind of like, yeah, we're scrimming, but it's not really a team. It's like the most amateur version of an amateur team possible, really.
Yeah. So looking through, you had a very interesting, I would say, career. You've had some of the biggest maybe ups and downs that a lot of people had, like scandal wise. You were like you were on the ball there for scandals, dude. And like it's not even that they're your fault. So you moved from Mouse Esports to go to Dream Team. So I want to talk about that for a little bit, because then it leads into obviously Tainted Minds and that whole scenario. Which, you know what's actually hilarious about Tainted Minds is there's probably a lot of people who don't even know about it anymore, because they're like relatively new to the scene. Whereas if you've been following the scene for a long time, like that was like huge. And it's hilarious because when you think of things like players unions and like franchising and some of the contract stuff that we have now, it's kind of hilarious that some of that stuff ever happened. But that's going to lead into some philosophical stuff. So briefly, what was Dream Team like?
I mean, the experience itself, like with the players, wasn't bad. Like I actually enjoyed working with them for it. Like it was a cool experience. It was my first like I don't know if it's like my first real challenger experience, because obviously like it's in Europe I was in EU Challenger Series, but everything in Europe was much more amateur version at the time. Like it was all remote. Like we tried to get a gaming house, but we didn't actually end up in one, which is why I ended up leaving Mouse Sports in the first place. Is because I just didn't have a place to live anymore. It's like I can't be on your team if I can't live here. So going to Dream Team was like my first experience in a gaming house. So that was like really cool to me. I was like, holy shit, this is it. Like I'm finally gonna be in a gaming house. It's really insane.
When we think of gaming houses now, you see gaming houses that are like multi-mansion, multi-million dollar. What kind of gaming house could we look at back in 2016?
I mean, it's just like you're in a suburb where there's like 500 houses that all look the same. Like there's so many suburbs like that in like the California area.
Yeah,
it was just one house in a neighborhood there, and yeah, I mean, I go to the house. It's a house with like the grass hasn't been cut. Like it's just not really taken care of because it's a bunch of gamers. No one gives a shit, man. No one cares how the house looks outside. I open the door. There's just the place is just gross. Like it's just nasty, and I'm like, all right. I actually spent my first day at Dream Team cleaning everything. Like I just cleaned the house. I washed all the dishes and stuff. And I remember, I think it was Cody or Peckin was just like, it's just gonna be just like dirty again tomorrow, right? It's like I don't care.
2
man.
days?
Like I can't.
Did it last 2 days? Or did it last 3?
It lasted a little bit. It was pretty bad though. Like the whole house was pretty gross. But no, I mean the experience with the players was cool. It was definitely eye opening to me that all right, esports is a little bit of a mess. It's definitely not what it looks like on the outside to a lot of people, and yeah, I mean it wasn't too bad. It was just, I think I am the type of guy who is more willing to call out bullshit and try to get it fixed than a lot of people. I think a lot of people would rather just roll with it, like don't cause too much of a stir. Like, hey man, it's not my place that this is messed up. I can still work and do this. And for me, it's just like, yeah, I don't think this is good. I think we should actually be like fixing this shit. And that's kind of what I learned from the Dream Team thing is like after the fact is like, all right, instead of just quitting and like leaving this whole situation, even though like it's fucked for me, is like I should try to actually be doing more to fix it for players. So it's kind of like a big wake up call for me. Is like I don't want to do it this way because I felt like I kind of just ditched the team when it happened. It's just like I left because like the owner was kind of messing me around, and I wasn't getting paid and I was supposed to get paid, and the situation was just super fucked, which thankfully eventually got solved. But yeah, I mean, I was just mad on my end. I just ditched. I didn't really do much to help the players other than like complain to Riot about it. But then I realized like Riot can't really do too much about it. Like at the time they couldn't because it's all like on the contractual end of things. Like they can't interfere with it because of liability reasons. So like I kind of learned that coming from it. It's like I should do more to like call this stuff out and go about it a different way if this type of thing happens. So that way like there can be progress and the community can kind of like out this type of thing and get rid of it.
Yeah, and what's kind of hilarious is you go from Dream Team, which you had some issues there, and God forbid it could get any worse. You then go from Dream Team to Tainted Minds, which was a clusterfuck from like everything that eventually like came out, and people can go and read like all the different like articles that are out there on there because there's a lot of them. You're more than welcome to do that. But so. Like we were saying just a second ago, you were at Dream Team, which was located in California, and then your next team, which is a kind of clusterfuck situation, is definitely not located in California. Okay, they were located in Australia, right?
Yeah, it was in Sydney, Australia. It was Tainted Minds. That was fun.
Yeah. So first of all, you leave Dream Team, and what is the first thought of like, oh, you know where I want to go? I want to go to Australia, or was there just nothing in NA? Did you not have any offers in NA, or EA for that matter?
So I didn't have offers in NA. I was actually just considering like I don't really want to be involved in this if it's not consistent. Like I kind of started to believe like what my parents were saying with things, and like understood that this might not be a reliable pathway for my career. I got reached out to by someone in Australia about like looking for team stuff, and I was actually like connected through Raz, who like I had known from DDIME, the caster. And then it was like a possible opportunity. I was like, okay, this could be pretty cool. like I was pretty passionate about trying to help the amateur scene with stuff, and I was like kind of my main focus because I had LCS offers in the past when I was in Europe. So I was pretty interested in doing that, and was like, okay, like I could go to Australia, like probably bring some NA players with me, and then off of that could probably bring a majority of that team over afterwards to North America, and then try to get them to qualify for Challenger Series through that. And maybe that would be something cool that I could do, and that could be my way of like trying to like help better the scene and do something important. Obviously, it didn't work out like that at all. It didn't even come close to working like that. It didn't last even a split, but
yeah. So you go from Tainted Minds, okay, and you go from there and you go to Echo Fox.
Yeah.
So the scene is very weird because you mentioned that you didn't have any NA offers. Granted, Academy was kind of starting to pick up a lot more by that time. What made Echo Fox reach out to you? Or did they have open applications you submitted? Like, how did you get in touch with Echo Fox and start? Because you worked your way up. You started with their academy, and then you worked up to being the head coach of Echo Fox. What was that transition like, getting in there all the way through? Because people, I will say that it's putting yourself a lot in the right places. Like, I think I interviewed with 3 league teams in 2016, 2017 before I made it through like last round of interviews. Then I moved to I got an interview with an Overwatch team. So it's definitely a lot of luck getting into teams. But like, like what was your experience like doing it? Because you mentioned you didn't have any NA offers, and then you get picked up by Echo Fox.
So during my time, like between Mousework and Dream Team, I had helped out some like friends just in their attempt to try to get into Challenger Series. And one of the players on the team, it was like a team with Shorter Race, Brandini, and a couple of other guys. I helped them out for a little bit. Brandini ended up on Echo Fox Academy. And so he was just like asking for help with stuff at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can help. And eventually ended up being a thing. Like I could go there and try to get a spot on the team. And like really what ended up happening with the process is I flew to LA from Australia, kind of just waited in the airport for a bit. Like, all right, I'm here. If you want to try me out, like, this is the time to try me out. I'm in LA. Like, I'm going to be going home. I didn't have like a ticket for home or anything. I was just chilling in LA. It's just kind of like a power play on my part. Just be like, yeah, if you want to try me, like, now's the time. Just kind of ended up going to their house and then stayed in their house for the next 2 months. Then ended up on their team. It was very interesting.
Like, you were like hoboing in their house.
Like kind of like they obviously allowed me, like they wanted me to help with the academy team. So I was just like there helping with the academy team, just helping them do the stuff. I helped them qualify. I really didn't do too much. I was there for such a short amount of time. Like there's not going to be a huge impact it could have. And then, while I was there, they just ended up reaching out to me, like from the staff side of Echo Fox. Like, yeah, we're letting go of our staff while they're in Korea. It's like, are you interested in being the head coach for Echo Fox? It's like, I mean, it's not really what I came here for. Like, I wanted to focus on the academy stuff, but yeah, like I can do that if you need me to. Then it was really random. It was not well planned out, not well set up. So I had like a few days to try to put together my staff for it. And then that's what you got with 2017 summer Echo Fox, really.
Yeah, and so you stayed with Echo Fox for a while, but then you actually ended up quitting. I'm assuming it's quitting. Esports is very weird with quitting / mutual letting go / So what was it that made you quit? What was the shift? Because you're someone who philosophically, you seem to care more about the way things are run and taken care of. And you have a really big passion from the little bit I've talked to you and the stuff that I've read about things being done right. And if they're not going to be done right, then you don't want to be part of it. And that's from an outside perspective, that's what it kind of sounds like happened. Is something wasn't being done that met your moral or your belief system. And you were like, okay, guys, we either change this or I'm out. And it sounds like it was an out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even to say that like what they were doing was wrong or something. I didn't agree with it. And like, I wanted to do things differently. And the way I thought of it is like, if this is how you guys want to do things, like I need to respect that that's what you guys want to do. And I don't think this is a job for me. And like, if you guys don't want to fire me from that because I disagree with you, it's like, for me, I feel like the best thing is like, I should quit. I should quit, go do my own thing, and you guys should focus on like building this with staff that actually believe in like what you're wanting to do with this and the way you're trying to approach it, because that's not me. So yeah, like I just met with the president. I was just like, I don't think this is like working. Like, I don't think this is good for me. Like, I don't think this is good for you guys. Like, I don't think we're on the same page, and like you should have someone else do it. Like, you have another guy here who could do it just as well if he better fits what you have. So like, you should go that way. So we just talked about it for a bit, and it was just like, yeah, okay, we'll go with this. So I put in like my 2 weeks notice. I just hung out, kind of helped transition the team for that 2 weeks onto Think Card at the time, who was the guy working with me while I was on Echo Fox that whole year. And yeah, then I was gone. I was not planning on coming back to esports at all. I was just like, I think this isn't the thing for me. I think I should go do some other things I'm passionate about, because I don't really like where the industry and everything is at right now. And I don't think it was the best place for me to be working in that I would be happy in.
Yeah. And I know that from a mental health perspective, I can understand that a lot, because a lot of things that happen related to mental health, like I hear things or I see things, and it just drives me insane. I'm just like, how does this happen? So yeah. I can definitely kind of relate to that in some aspects. But I think really delving into like your philosophy is kind of where I want to head next. Because that's something that seems to be really important to you, is your kind of like the philosophy and the way that you handle things. So what is your philosophy with esports, with coaching? Because that's primarily what we've been doing is coaching. So what is your philosophy that you think the scene should be going into?
I mean, I don't think there's like a huge philosophy that I have really, or like I don't even know how to like say what it is. I just think esports needs to be doing a lot more with people from, I guess, for like the league side, the academy level, the like amateur level, to actually build like good habits. Like, there's going to be a lot of guys that have been in esports for a while that are going to have very just defined habits that they're happy with, and that they're not really going to move away too much from, because there's no reason for them to. They've been successful doing it, and that's natural. Like, you're not going to move away from it, and you're not going to like break people from that too much. And I think league needs to do a lot more, and especially like North America, on the build up amateur guys and the model of like what you think is correct and what you think that your like team structure should be, and like what you want your like whole organization and team's identity to be built around. And there should be a lot more done on that. And if you're not approaching it like that, your success is going to be very inconsistent. It's just going to work based on if you happen to spend enough to get your players, and to get like guys that are just individually good enough to carry you to find success. And I've kind of found like a lot of teams aren't really willing to commit something like that long term.
I was going to say that was going to bring my next question is, do you think, from my experience, and this goes back kind of to mental health, is mental health is almost always a long-term thing. It is not a short-term thing, right? You don't fix mental health issues in a short-term period of time most of the time. Okay, there are some cases to this, but most of the time it's long-term, and you're looking at the longevity and growth of an individual. And in my opinion, I would say that esports most of the time is a short-term game. Right, they're playing for the short term most of the time, and I don't know if it does play for the long term. And I haven't seen a team that really has convinced me that the long term longevity of both players and building the scene is something they even care about.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely more short term, like you're saying. Teams kind of need success now, like they need to see it now. Like I need to win as an organization. We need this. Whatever you're doing. We don't care what you're planning. If it results in wins, we're happy. If it doesn't, we're not happy. Which I can respect if you're short term. Like, I get it. I get why organizations would be like that. Like, there's no guarantee that esports is going to be a long term thing. Obviously, having short term success is important to like garnering fans, which is the only way to have any sort of income right now, or any sort of revenue in esports, is if you have a bunch of fans. Because you're not getting much on the monetization side from like Riot, Overwatch League, Blizzard, like all of that. Like, you're not going to get too much, so you need fans, and like that makes sense to me. I totally get that, and looking at it, I see why teams are like that. But I think when you're coming in as like a coach, or you're like trying to build it as like a manager and have like this great environment to like build players up from the ground up, it's tough. It's really tough to build that as a staff and actually find success with it, because it's just not there for you. Teams don't have the time to wait on that, and they don't have the patience for something like that to actually function. And I mean, it's also just hard for teams to know if like what a coach is doing is good. They have no way to know. There's no like background to say like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I've done this for years. It's like, I'm just a 24-year-old kid. Like, for all I know, a lot of stuff I can be doing is wrong. Like, and it probably is. And I'm just trying to learn like everyone else, right? So it makes sense for teams not to commit around coaches like that, and to not want to like fully commit to like a system a coach wants to put in. But I think when it's like that, it's hard for you to do much as a coach. You're going to be limited in the resources you have and the tools you have to actually like build these environments for players. And for me, like looking at that is like, I can see why it's like this, but I don't want to be a part of it because I think my job is ultimately useless like that. There's no need. There's no need for a coach if it's going to be like that. Like, hey, you might as well just have another manager in the room. Like, hey guys, here's where you're going to be today. This is when you show up. This is who you scrim. Hey, have fun. And it just seems like a lot of teams are happy with like a babysitter in the room to kind of make sure everyone's not beating each other up. So with that, I was down to exit esports. It wasn't really something I wanted to be a part of if that was what it was going to feel like.
Mm-hmm. So it sounded like, I remember when you left, you made it sound like you already had an idea of like what you wanted to do and a direction that you wanted to go into, and that was sidestepped by Golden Guardians. But I want to know, with like, my mind was blown because I had heard that, like, when I had heard like before it was announced, I had some people who knew that you were being hired and some other people, and I was like, what was his cool idea though? Because that's really what I want to know, is what was the idea where you were like, fuck this, I'm done, I'm going to do this other thing that I'm super passionate about. What was that? Because that means more to me.
I was just going to try to get back into the lighting stuff. I was just going to focus on that. I was going to go to school, focus on that. I could easily get work doing something like that with the experience I have. So I was just going to focus on doing it. It was really not too hard to like find a job doing something like that. So I was like, yeah, I can do this. That's pretty easy. Why not? Focus on that. Just try to go into a different career path and just kind of leave esports behind me and just be happy with what I had already from it. But yeah, then I got linked up with Golden Guardians. It's just kind of like,
how did they convince you to come back? Because you have this grand philosophy that does not fit most teams. And truth be told, from an outside perspective, I don't know if it fits Golden Guardians. I'm gonna wait and see if they keep you around for a couple years, then I will believe it. But until that time lapse happens where they're not just firing people because they're not doing well, I will not believe it. I'm sorry that I'm going to be skeptical there.
I mean, I can understand. I would understand why anyone would be skeptical of that. It's esports. Now the big convincer was me. It was I had talked to Kirk. It's Kirk Lacob from the Warriors, who actually like handles everything on this side with the esports stuff. I'd spoke to him and Hunter, and I had like a really good conversation with them. This was like during the time after I quit Echo Fox. I was just looking to do consulting work just to like help teams out. I was like, hey, why not? Like, if you're wanting to find help with it, like, I'm down to just provide some input. And that was definitely something they were looking for. And Kirk's whole goal was something long term. He really, like, he knew I was looking to do like possibly something managerial if I stayed in esports at all. And wanted to know like why, and I spoke to him about like the reasons why and how I was like, I don't think it's a good system for coaches with the way it is, and that if I was to stay in, I'd be able to do more as a manager, and like find coaches and support them and like support their idea. He's talking about like, yeah, the way they're wanting to do things is long term, focus on making sure like we have a good system that's going to build for the future. Like even if it doesn't work now, they don't care. They just want it to be something that's like, okay, we're seeing that there's growth on this aspect, and that this will lead to future success. If it doesn't work now, who cares? We just want to make sure that it's going to work long term, and that we're going to see like it pay dividends over time, and that we're not just like going in losing for nothing, or we're going in winning, but we're only going to win one split and then just lose the next one. So I really like that idea. And then I was speaking with Danon a lot in the off season, and I really respected like the way he approached things at C9 and how he was doing things there. And, you know, like when you talk to other players and stuff, you hear what they think about management and hear what they think about what people are doing. And, you know, it was just good. Like I really liked how he was. And then when I saw that he left C9 and then just joined Golden Guardians because they were looking for a manager, I was like, what the hell? Like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I would want. Like, if it's going to work for me, this would be where it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's okay with me. Like, I'm just going to do everything I can with that opportunity. And just try to build a good system and try to build something that'll work. Like, if it doesn't work now, that's okay as long as it's something that is like going to be provable that over time will be better and that we can create that.
I think that's a fairly good reason.
It was very fortunate that something like that popped up.
I feel like it's very rare. Like I said, it's so rare that I want to see if it happens. Like, I hope it does, because that would make me so happy. Because like that means like things would just get better in a lot of other areas as well. So for me, I really do hope it does happen. But I'm just super skeptical based on what I've seen and like people I've talked to and all that. So I'm skeptical. But I'm skeptical in a hoping matter. So we talked about like long-term plans. And when you talk about long-term plans, and especially something we talked about earlier, is like winning, right? Like that is an important aspect for all teams right now. And whether or not they gain fans, which pretty much equals dollar signs right now, any revenue to offset the cost that teams are having. So how much does winning matter if you're going for a long-term plan?
I mean, winning definitely matters now still. It would be great. It's very important to win now if you can. But in the idea of what Golden Guardians has and wants to build, if we win now and then we lose tomorrow or something, it's not good. Like, it doesn't matter. It isn't sustainable. It isn't something that's going to provide long-term success, which is what they want. They want to build it up. So like, yeah, I could go out, spend a bunch of money, try to get like the most amazing roster in the world and just win out. And then it's like, hey, look, we're good. But then if like our academy system sucks and we don't have the next talent coming in, next year we're screwed. We don't have anything to build off of. So like they still want to win now. And I would really love to win now. Like I'm a competitive person. I hate losing. So like even losing now would just piss me off. Like it sucks so much. Like starting 0-4 for us, like that felt so bad. Because we'd done so well in scrims and like we messed up on stage and like I knew it could happen, but it still just like pissed me off so much. And like I want the players to do good because I really care about the players doing well. But I'm a competitive person. I want to win. So seeing it happen sucks. But I know like long term is what matters. Long term is the only goal and the only thing that really matters for us overall. And I really trust that that's what they're like behind and that's what they mean with all of this.
So this kind of brings me to you mentioned long-term, which long-term brings me kind of into mental health. And one of the subjects that's been brought up in League of Legends is like free time and how people utilize free time and lot. And one of the things that you've mentioned and kind of said is that sometimes it can be a huge disadvantage having people just grind, obviously because you can burn out, which can happen. So playing devil's advocate here, though, that's true if you burn out. But if you don't, if you look at like the teams or the different cultures who have different working environments and stuff like that, who do just grind all the time, doesn't that put you at a distinct disadvantage if you don't grind, like to the very max limit? Like how do you compensate for that? Because what you're hoping is functionally that someone will. You're either hoping that you're grinding the line, you're really at that line, and your players don't burn out, and that if they're also grinding, that they go over. Or they're not doing it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you're definitely putting in less work and it's like you're not working to that point of like barely treading the line where you're not going to burn out and you're like playing optimally what's good for you, obviously you're at a disadvantage. But I think that rather than trying to find where that like happy medium is, a lot of people just default to we're playing all day, every single day, and you're going to be tired and who cares because you're going to win if you do it. And then you start off the season and you lose. It's like, I'm grinding for nothing. It's like my thing with school is like I did all this grinding and then I lost and I was just pissed. Like there's nothing more I could do and I'm still losing. This sucks. When instead if you're on the opposite end of it, like maybe there's more you can do. Maybe there's more you can do outside of the game and like your mentality is it's just in a better place.
Yeah, just to preference this, I agree with you. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate because it's something like the mental health guy's like, well, why aren't you grinding till you die? No, like,
trust me, I know. I definitely know you're on my side with this, but like I know that's like the argument that people will come with, and I get it. It's what has found success. Like it is what Korea does. It is what all the like successful teams do. But I just think that overall, like for longevity, like there's a better way to approach it. There's a better way to approach it that will lead to long-term success. But rather than trying to find that and being okay with losing now, people would rather grind themselves and try to match it, which isn't working. Like it hasn't worked for us. Like we haven't gotten to the point where we're beating like these teams internationally and actually winning the whole thing. And like we can keep trying, and eventually, yeah, maybe we will, because we get together like the 5 players that are just going to work with this perfectly, and they're just going to stomp and maybe win. Like it could happen. Like it's bound to happen statistically at some point. But I think that, like, especially North America as a region, like we're not at that point. Our practice isn't good enough to just like make that happen. Like our system isn't good enough to allow these players to grow and be at their best possible point and to provide the best that they can, while also being like mentally sound and okay with themselves and able to like think rationally about how they could be better or what they could do. So like I want us to find that, and I want us to be able to find it. And I think that's an important step for any esport, is to try to have like that type of system be normal and normalized, because otherwise we're just grinding. We're going to have shorter careers because we're just we're grinding ourselves to death thinking that this is the best way because it's all we're trying. And I don't know. I just think it's good for short term. It's always going to work short term. And if that's what you want, and as I said, like esports right now is focused very much on short term, you know, it is the path to success. That's what'll get you there. Grind all day. You're going to be better than the people around you instantly, guaranteed. But it's just not healthy long term. And I think it will not lead to long term success. And it's just, that's how I view it. And I think that if people are able to put enough time into trying to make that work, it'll be a lot better in the long run. Yeah. We just have to, you know, try it and be okay with sucking at first.
Yeah, and so that kind of brings me to another thing is, and one of the things I've noticed with players is a lot of time player goals, having worked with different players related to Overwatch and now Fortnite and some other things, their goals tend to be focused just around winning. And when you have goals that are just focused around winning and you don't meet those goals, there's no other growth metric to be in there. And so you do get kind of, I did all this work and I didn't meet my only goal. How do you handle that? Because I view that as, if that is your only goal is winning, winning as a goal can be very, very dangerous just in general, because especially if you put in much like your school, if you put in all the work and you don't make it, and that's the only thing that you're really looking onto, it can be devastating. What do you do for players and maybe things related around player goals or coaching too? Like if their only goal is to win, what metrics do you put in place to know that you've done a good job and that you've met goals?
I mean, for players, it's obviously extremely important to have other goals. I mean, it's literally like what you're saying. You're kind of hinting at it already. Like you need to have ways that you can gauge that practice is going well. You need to have ways you can point at, like, you're doing better at this, and I can show it by looking at this compared to what you did in the past. A lot of teams will have different ways of approaching that, but I think it's very good to just map out, like, you did this better, you did this better, you did this better. You have these goals like on your checklist, and we're checking them and tracking them in a chart. And look, over time, like you were doing it like 80% of the time. Now you're doing it 100% of the time. Like that's good. And that just shows like it's a habit for you now. Like if I don't track this, I know you're going to do it. If I go back and I look at it and I track it again, it's like, all right, you're hitting 100% on this every time. You're good. And I think like if you're a player and you know like you have something like that and you can see it and it's in front of you and it's like charted in some way, it's easy to know like, okay, I'm doing something better. Yeah, if you're just focused straight on winning and you're gonna lose, it's
you've probably worked with players that are like that too, I imagine.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the majority of people are like that. Like they just care about winning. It's the short-term focus. Like you're gonna win or you're gonna lose, and obviously one is bad and one is good. If I'm on the bad side, well, my mentality is gonna be bad. Like it's doomed. This is all I cared about and I didn't get it. Well, I guess I didn't improve. We suck.
So when you're looking at players who are like, is that something that worries you when you start to like try out players or you're looking at players? So if you see that mentality, is that something that is like a red flag for you that you're like, I need to be really worried about this?
I mean, it's definitely a red flag if that's how someone thinks. That's generally like a maturity thing though. Yeah. Now obviously some of it is just due to how esports has been and people are going to have that just like rooted in their head, and that's understandable and it's not necessarily their fault. But it is like a maturity thing, understanding that like you need to do other things to improve and to get better, and that you have to be focused on that for now and then it'll get better. So yeah, it's a red flag, but I think it's something you can work through too. It's not something that like scares me off of players. It's something that like I have to be aware of. This is just how they are, and trying to help them like mature as a person and a competitor.
And so this leads me into kind of another question related to like scrimming and then transitioning to the day performance, which obviously there's a difference just based on like play styles. The way people play during scrims is normally very different from the way that they play on game day. And so we hear about like the scrim bucks and like, oh my God, I'm doing so well in scrims. What has been some major things that you've seen that really do not transition, the reason why things do not transition in your experience, why things don't transition from scrims to game days? Because we hear all the time, every season, from some teams or multiple teams or half the teams, oh, we're doing so well in scrims, but it just didn't transition.
Yeah, I mean, scrims in general are very much just not like stage. This is why I relate back to, like, I think practice is just like not very good in general. I think it's kind of just like a shitty system with the way it works. And you go into practice, people are a lot more aggressive on both sides than they would ever be on stage. On stage, everyone's a lot more passive. So playing like slow games on stage will usually lead to wins. Like scaling comps, you're probably going to win because both teams will play a lot slower. And I think it's just a mentality thing going in. Like people are willing to be more risky in scrims, and they're really loose. They have that loose feeling like it doesn't matter too much. If I lose, it's not the end of the world. But when you go on stage, you're thinking of losing. You're worried about losing, and when you're focused on losing so much, you take so many less risks. You push so much less, and all it does is lead to you, like, conceding everything and losing. You lose because you're so scared of losing. And that's what happens a lot. So usually when teams like have that issue, it's that type of mental block that's there, like that they're afraid to push as much as they do in scrims. And it stops them from achieving like what they could be because it's obviously there. A lot of the like scrim god players just have that, like they don't push as much as they could, and it limits them. And that's a tough mental block for people to break. It's a really tough one. It's hard as a coach to really find a way to fix too. Like I'll be the first one to admit I'm not really sure how to fix it. I don't have the magical solution to unlock someone's scrim potential to show up on stage, but it's definitely something that, we work towards and try to fix and, find a solution to.
Okay. And then my last question that I kind of want to ask you about, and then I have two questions. I lied to you. I asked you too. Okay. And then we'll get going. So another thing that has been, we talked about free time a little bit, and one of the things that gets brought up, and I think it's less of a big deal now, but I know that definitely like when esports was starting and through a lot of League of Legends, it's kind of a big deal. It's the idea of like relationships and players having relationships and have their relationship, and they don't care about their job, and that isn't really that important, which I think is bullshit. But that's my opinion. What is your kind of your opinion on like relationships and the idea of it?
I think relationships are fine to have in esports. I don't see a downside to it as long as you're mature enough to handle the responsibilities of a relationship and the responsibilities of a job. A lot of athletes have relationships. They can get away with it just fine for the most part. It's just, man,
it's stupid.
A lot of it is just the problem of a lot of people in the space are teenagers. A lot of teenagers struggle with being able to maturely handle a relationship. Yes. So then they're going to struggle with handling a relationship and competing. So it's not that relationships are a problem. That's more of just the maturity aspect of being able to handle both is problematic. So I do think it can be an issue. It just depends on the person. And it's not that having a girlfriend or a boyfriend is the problem. It's just being mature enough to handle a relationship is a problem. I've never had issues with it. There's definitely been some players that were problematic because of it, but I've never just been like, you can't have girlfriends on this team. It's not allowed. Like, I think that'd be a weird precedent to set as a team.
It'd be a very weird conversation to have. I can't imagine having that conversation. Okay, so legit. Last question, and then I will get you on with your day. So having been on the show, I hope it was a very fun experience, which I greatly appreciate you coming on here. You are my second head coach, and I had another one who used to be a head coach, but he is no longer. So you're my second. So having had this experience, I hope that this show is kind of unique in the fact that we cover a bunch of things that most people don't. But having had this experience, if you could pick anyone, and they do not have to be a player, they do not have to be a coach, they can be behind the scenes people, they can be people involved. They just need to be involved in esports in some capacity. who would you have on the show?
I think probably the person I would pick, just because it'd be interesting and I'd love to hear his like perspective on things, is Tanner DeMonte, the clutch mid laner. Because we're pretty good friends. Obviously worked with him on Echo Fox. He's a funny guy, and yeah, it would be funny to rope him into doing something. I would definitely like to see him doing some content.
Okay, I will reach out and see if he responds to me. So it's like a 50-50 like gamble sometimes.
Yeah.
But so is life. So do you have any shout outs? I normally don't do them, but if you do, I'll let you have them.
I mean, just to the people that, follow me and support me. Thanks so much. Like, I've had a very roller coaster career, but the people that have supported me have always been a great support system for me and a good way for me to keep going with everything. So thanks to those guys.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
This has been Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. Until next time, I hope everyone has a wonderful day.